So you do want to look at all your past assignments and email me a list. I have a 0 for XYZ. It's now uploaded, please grade it. So I want to have a really clear list, not one that says, check all my stuff. So, you know, I need to know exactly which ones you've uploaded. Okay. So graphics, is there any other questions as we go forward? And again, I've got assignments I need to hand back, and I'll try to take some time, stop and do that later today. But any other questions before we start? Okay, so graphics, it's in the InDesign textbook, and there is some information here. I'll also turn on my little hover cam so that you can see that, and it's recorded. We've done quite a bit with graphics already, but we'll talk more about graphic formats and color, resolution, some drawn lines and such that you can work with within InDesign. Graphic manipulation, placing images in InDesign, vector graphics resized, raster graphics resized and cropping, expanding and compressing graphics, repositioning a graphic within its cropped frame, pasting into a transform panel, align panel, effects panel, and linked images. So again, you can read the information here, but in general, portable document format, so that's becoming much more used, I think, in the print industry now. Rather than even sending TIFF images. A lot of times if you're going to be submitting something for print somewhere, they'll ask for a PDF format versus the tagged image format. And then Photoshop and Illustrator documents. So AI is an Illustrator document, Adobe Illustrator, and as you know, PSD is the Photoshop document. Your computer screen puts out red, green, blue. So that's how you see your colors is RGB. Versus in print, so you have a 4-color process, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And each one has a plate, and I'll bring my little bag. I've got a bag of all sorts of stuff, but each color has a plate. They put it on like a drum, and it rolls through. So they actually go through several times, the 4-color print or press. Let's see. Raster images are like Photoshop, you know how you have dots, versus vector formats that's actually a truly scalable. So as you size something up, you know when it's a dot image, a raster image, and you size it up really big, you can actually see the squares. So an image that's a vector format is going to maintain, so it's kind of like a mathematical calculation of the shapes and lines and such. They're much more simple in nature, but it can truly be scaled up and scaled down without loss of quality. And now I think with Photoshop, used to be that you could kind of expand things 10% and you'd be okay. Now there's, Photoshop has better tools for increasing scale, does a better job, and there's all sorts of different tools within. Let's see. Raster images are measured in pixels per inch. So high resolution image is 300 pixels per inch or more, and contains enough pixels to resolve the image clearly, is basically that 300 pixel per inch threshold. And we'll keep going on that. So let me grab my hover cam. Okay, so chapter 7 is all about graphics. And I don't want to spill that. Okay, so might have to move it around a little bit. We kind of just went through that briefly, but portable document format, documents, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and tagged image formats. Scan images are usually TIFFs. We can place, so remember InDesign is a application tool that allows you to place all sorts of different file formats, including image file formats within the InDesign document. Vector file formats, again, talked about that a little bit in that it's truly a scalable image. And then Adobe Illustrator files, you can make sure to check create PDF compatible file in the options. If you save the file or InDesign won't be able to read it. And avoid EPS is encapsulated PostScript files. So that's kind of old technology. Graphic color, we talked a little bit about red, green, blue. That's our computer screen versus CMYK, which is for print. And the two modes are not interchangeable. What you see on your screen is oftentimes not what you're going to see printed on a page. So clarity, I'm sure you've even seen that. Maybe if you printed here a little bit through InDesign, it's not always exactly the same. And when you go to press, so if you have something printed at a professional print house, they'll oftentimes print a proof copy for you, not only proofing type and wording and such, but everything. So the image, the quality, the placement, alignment, proximity of, you know, everything, because things can shift just a little bit. Color can shift. Skin tones especially can shift. So sometimes you really need to pay close attention. So both kids worked at Hoagieville's, and Saturday is Grizz game day. And I think on Fridays and Saturdays they could wear like Grizz wear, and nobody proofed. I don't know who's responsible for proofing. My sister actually works for those guys too, so it's not her job, but the t-shirts came out Montana. It wasn't Montana, it was Montana. So they ordered a few, which was pretty funny, but that kind of stuff happens. You know, you see that over and over again. Okay, so we talked about the graphic resolution and raster versus vector. Again, commercial printing, 300 pixels per inch. You can reduce the size, but also sometimes even when you reduce images, they don't look very clear. So there is some problems at times with images, whether you expand them, blow them up, or shrink them down. The performance display, so let's actually go into InDesign. So you'll see what this is here in just a minute. We don't really use this. You probably noticed when you've gone into InDesign before that there's a box, or all of the tools really, the boxes, circles, etc., with an X through it. So that's a placement icon really. It's a placement shape. And it might be that you're getting this publication rushed and put together, and you've got somebody out in the field taking a picture, and you know that that picture is going to be, I don't know, 300 pixels by 400 pixels, something like that. And so you create this little placeholder for it, and then everything else can wrap around it properly, and then you're just waiting for that, you know, photographer to come back. So you'll see sometimes the placeholder, and then in display performance. So let's see if I can just open something here. And I don't have an image, but if you go to Object, and then land on display performance. So all images come in at what's called a typical display, or fast. So it's the default, it's a low quality so that it's quicker to open our documents. And sometimes you might notice that the documents don't look very good. Have you noticed any of your images kind of look crummy in InDesign? So you can check, because it could be that it's a crummy image. So that could be a possibility. But it also might be that you want to go and test it in high quality display. So that's the print quality that you're bringing it in at. just to see if it is a workable image. So you have to change that. It will slow things up, but you do have to change it. Okay. Drawn graphics, so these are kind of fun. And actually we'll go, here's all the tools right here. And let's go back into InDesign, and I'm going to close this excerpts from a dog here and just do a new one. So we can go to create new. Let's do just a blank 8.5 by 11 single page. We don't even need one column, margins 3P0 all the way around. So basically just a regular old page. Don't need facing pages, and then create. So it's just a one-page document. Okay, so there's some pretty fun tools here. And the tools are, so here's the placeholder, the rectangle frame tool. So you can see there's the rectangle, elliptical, and polygonal. So that's really kind of for placement. Whereas the next tool over, and you've probably already worked with these, so the rectangle, the ellipse, and the polygon. So go ahead and grab we'll just work with this tool first, the rectangle tool. And the colors that you have selected are the colors that you're going to draw with. So if I click and drag a box right now, I've got a 1-point black solid stroke and no fill. And I can keep selecting the box and change my fill, change my stroke, change the style of my stroke. And sometimes you have to click off of it. You can go to your preview, but you still need to kind of click off of it to see what it really looks like. You can also zoom in, with your Control+. To select that again, I need my black selection tool. So any of your tools or any of your shapes, black selection tool, click back on it, because if I don't have it selected, there's nothing I can do to click it. And I can choose to change just one thing, go back to solid and my stroke, but I also can change my color. Okay, and I can always go back to none. Paper is white, none is transparent, if there's anything behind it, for example. Okay, and to select shapes back again, so like Microsoft Word, you can kind of click anywhere on it and you get the shape. You kind of have to be on a border, and I think you've maybe had some experience with that already. Okay, to draw a perfect square, hold your Shift key down and you get a square. The ellipse tool is exactly the same. So if I want a perfect circle, I hold my Shift key. If I want an oval, I click and drag. There is, as far as the color, I can use the cyan, magenta, yellow, black, or the red, green, blue. And I think, did you notice that you can also create new colors? So there's this little, on the right-hand side of my colors, I can go to New Color Swatch, or even New Gradient Color Swatch, but New Color Swatch first. And you can choose process or spot. So if I had, the grizzly maroon might be a spot color versus a process color. In process, I'll just show you that there's a whole lot of different types. In process, I might have, there's Pantones. Have you ever gone to a paint store and you see all the paint chips? So there's color associated, obviously, with every single one of those paint chip colors. And there's kind of a little it's a large wheel that you can spread out, but it's paint chips on kind of a long, there's a whole bunch of them all stuffed together, but Pantone coated versus uncoated. Coated is that shiny paper. You know how sometimes paper has a flat or a matte appearance versus sometimes there's a coated like a shiny. So that's the difference there. Anyway, so in Pantone uncoated, there's all sorts of different colors I could pick from. So I could choose purple if I want to. And then purple becomes one of my colors. So you can add colors to it. I can do a tint of that color, obviously, and I think you've probably seen the tint before, right? At the top right. Okay, gradient swatches. So it can be a linear or a radial gradient, and then you can just choose the colors that you want. So again, I can go the same thing. I can go to my CMYK. I can run my slider as to what color that is. I can type values in. I can grab them from my swatches if I've created my swatches panel, and then I can choose that purple for one of them and leave the other one black, or maybe change it to blue, which looks horrible, but there's my radial gradient. There's also a gradient feather tool that allows you to, as you click and drag, and this the gradient feather tool, there's two of them. One goes to transparency, and one is simply the two colors itself. So if I control, oops, undo cut, undo gradient feather. If I go to the other one, so the regular old gradient tool, and I can click and drag, I get to choose the direction that I want my gradient to be, how far it rolls down. So I can kind of make it look like an eyeball or something if I really want to. Thinking Halloween eyeballs. How did you? Did you draw a circle?
Yeah, that's circle.
Okay. Did you get a feather? Okay. So go to your color palette, which is at the top, or if you have it at the right, you might see it here too, the fill. I guess I'm so used to using the top panel. And again, that top panel, if you go to Window, and then you can turn on or off Control, and you should be able to get that. Okay, so I choose my color, and then at the right of that, so where you see tint, you'll see three little lines. And if you click on that, you'll see New Gradient Swatch. And then you can choose linear, radial. I just happen to choose radial. I can name it something if I want to. And my gradient ramp, so I've got one color, and I can choose something that's from my swatches, from CMYK, RGB. So if I choose my CMYK, it's from a slider value, or I can simply type in percentages. But if I already have my swatches selected, I can choose from my swatches panel and then choose colors from here. And maybe I want, instead of the blue, maybe I want yellow this time, and I can name it purple yellow gradient, and then OK. And there's two, so on your panel tool palette here, there's a gradient feather that has checkerboard, and if you choose that one, it's going to fade, so it allows you to fade to transparency, which is nice in some ways if you want to fade to transparency. And I can only choose, if I wanted to, I could be just changing the fill. It is changing the stroke and everything on that one. And again, I can edit, undo my gradient feather. The next one to the left of that is my gradient swatch. And again, how you choose to click and drag. And I can go outside the box. If I go way outside the box, I get mostly purple. If I go the other direction, I get mostly yellow. I can even move the gradient. Is it that computer again? Yeah. Your grade won't be based on that. Let's see how it goes. I wonder if we're going to have that computer maybe re-ghosted or something, re-imaged. Is it, have you been able to work normally in class? The only gradient. Oh, even when you click on the little ramp? So it won't let you select those?
Yeah, I can't stop.
By the way, this allows you to change the little diamond thing too. Yeah, I don't know why it's stuck then, I think. Yeah, I mean, the process would be the same. Yeah. And Katie?
Yeah, so all my shapes have X's in the middle.
Are you doing this one? So it's the frame tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, the frame tool is really used for placements. Yeah, so if you're gonna, you know, somebody's out taking a picture and you're holding that spot for that particular picture. So that's usually what people use the frame tool for.
Okay.
Yeah, so the other one is that one. To get rid of things, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of all this because it's messy on my screen. So I can go to my black selection tool and then just click and drag an entire box around everything that I've got, which selects it all, press delete key, off it goes. Yeah, so that gets rid of a bunch of it. The other kind of fun tool, there's a Polygon Tool down at the, it's the third one down from your rectangle, ellipse, poly. So click on that one. The deal here, this one's kind of fun. Again, when you just click and release, so go ahead and just click and release, you should get a polygon box. Is that correct or not?
Mm-hmm.
No? Is there, so far so good? Okay. If you don't get that, so I'll go ahead and cancel where I'm at. So again, it's the Polygon tool and it's got the straight sides. So be sure to choose that. And when you bring it out into your document area, you just get kind of a little plus sign. So if you just click your left mouse release, you get the options box. So not a click drag, but click release. So then I get a width and a height, and I can decide I want this to be 12p0 by 12p0. So I can decide what I want it to be. A polygon is 6 sides, but a star is 5 sides. I can choose my inset. Let's just see what a 25% inset looks like. So I want to choose polygon settings, number of sides 5, star inset, let's say 25%, and then say OK, and it automatically creates it for me once I say OK. This tool I can click and drag right now with my current settings. I've got a 5-sided 25%, and without my shift key, I can create a goofy looking shape. With my shift key, it's perfect. Well, is it perfect? I don't know. Anyway, if I want to change that, so again, the same poly tool, then I just come out and I click and release, same thing. So if you unselected the poly tool, you may have to go back and click it again. So now maybe we want to do a 50% inset. And again, the width and the height might be based on whatever I just did. So it probably changed, but there's kind of a more traditional looking star. There's even some fun things you can do with number of sides. I can do 90 sides with a star inset of 50%. I can do 50 sides with a inset of 90%, whoops, 90%. And I get, so you know that, was it the spirograph? Does anybody remember the spirograph? Yeah, so that kind of reminds me of spirographs. But anyway, then, and these are like any shape, so I can go to my black selection tool, and I can just simply click and drag, but it's going to be out of proportion, so Control Z that. To keep it in proportion, you probably have to hold the Shift key down. So I can make that kind of big, and of course I'm just using black and clear. If I want to use my purple color, then I can choose my purple color for my fill. I can pick this up and move it behind my star and see how it helps you out. Remember those snap to? So I can actually snap to both vertical and horizontal so that it's perfectly placed on that star. And I can see the star shape through it a little bit. I might be able to send it to the back. There's just a slight change there. But if this was a filled star, obviously that would be a different story. And then to get to the little star, so sometimes, and I think, have you had issues sometimes getting to things in Photoshop or in InDesign? It's like it's layered, and how do I get to that layer? So Control key and then clicking on the star border lets me get to the star. So again, it's fun to be able to arrange them. You know, again, you can stack several with bring forwards and backward, or if you've got just a couple, I actually do the send to back or bring to front. The transforms, you know, there's flipping and rotating and kind of your usuals, I guess, moving, scaling, selecting objects above or below, but that Control key can help out a lot. I can group the two objects, so if I want them to be one, you can hold your Shift key down. So if I have nothing selected here, if I think that that's like the best thing ever and I want to group them, and notice I could probably move this little star a little bit. So it might be in the center according to my alignment, but if I really am not happy with where it's at, I can Control click on the little star, up arrow just a little bit if I think I need to up arrow just a little bit, and maybe I'm super happy right there with wherever that's at. And again, to select everything again, now if you click and drag over all of it, it is going to select the whole thing, and then I can object group it, and now that whole thing moves as one unit. And I can ungroup it also. And then the other kind of fun thing, so whether it's grouped or ungrouped, and I might move, whoopsie, I might move this out of the way just so that you can get this a little bit easier, and you can work with any of your stars. So there's also, and you might have seen kind of all the little dots there a second ago, but there's the direct selection tool. So there's kind of the regular selection tool, and then the white one is the direct selection tool. And what that lets you do, so if I start kind of with nothing selected here and I move again to my little tool there, can you see how they're white? They're like see-through little holes. Can you tell the difference? So move off of any of your stars, use your sub-selection, direct selection, whatever you want to call it, and move kind of to a border, and you'll see it change, but then just go ahead and click, and you should see that there's some like holes through those squares. When you get the holes through the squares, that means you can independently manipulate each one. So I can make a crazy looking star. Yeah, I could do that with this little guy right here. So I can create not only something that's, you know, kind of fun anyway, spirograph, but now I can make it my own. And then move my goofy looking star. Oops. Now why won't that move? There we go. And move it on it, which looks horrible. Anyway, so those are pretty fun. So that's our Polygon tool. Let me go back to my little hover cam. So reshape a drawn polygon, we've done that. Reshape a polygon as you create it. There's some space bars and all sorts, you know, arrow keys that you can do. And there's also, so you can make a whole grid of them. This is also pretty fun. Let's get rid of all of our, so delete key. Let's go back to kind of a regular old star. So I'm going to go to my Polygon tool and then just go ahead and click. And I'm going to make something that's kind of normal. So I'm going to do a five-sided 50% inset and then OK. And I'm actually going to delete that one here. But so go ahead and make sure that you go ahead and work with your tools. Again, just go ahead, click release, change to 5-sided, 50% inset, and we kind of have a normal, what we think of as a normal star. So then go ahead and delete that once you're sure you have that. And this is pretty fun. So I still have my poly tool selected. Do you have that little plus still? You want to have the little plus. So you're going to click, drag, hold, and you're going to keep the click, drag, hold down, okay? So I'm going to click, drag, hold, and I've got my 1 star, and then I'm going to arrow key to the right, and I get 2 stars. If I arrow key to the right again, I get 3. If I arrow key up, I get 6, and if I arrow key up again, I get 9. And so these are not all like normally shaped. If I want to have like a perfect star, I hold my shift key down and then click and drag, and they're all perfect. So you can combine all those tools. And each of this could be grouped. So remember how we group things? You could group this so it moves as one unit, or you can leave them separate, and I can move them all over the place. So it's a quick way for me to create like 9 stars, and I don't have to leave them there. I can pick them up and move them all over the place and create my background. I can fill them with different colors, pictures. Okay, and that's the same for any of your tools. So they all work the same. So that's kind of the line tool. I mean, that's, you know, pretty easy. You've worked with that, I think, before. There's a stroke for the line tool. I just selected my stars. That's why that happened. Let me go and unselect those. So to unselect, again, you can just go to the black pointer tool and click. But the line tool, again, you can click and drag. If you want, you know, the 45s, 90, you do have to hold the shift key down. So sometimes the line tool, and let me try to go in. Yeah, that's okay. So this is well, no, that looks pretty good. Sometimes lines, and it depends on the program and what you're doing. I'm at 800%, and actually that line looks pretty good. I don't know if it would print super good. Usually when they're constrained with your shift key, again, you'll get the vertical, the 90, 45, etc. They look a little bit better, but see when I click hold on that, how it's kind of jaggedy? I don't know if it would print. Now when I release, it cleans up, but that's kind of always a danger with lines, is that they may not be great. So I'm gonna fit this on screen again. That's kind of really our fun little tools. The pencil tool, I think that's in this section too. So the pencil tool is based on, again, the pixel size and, you know, my regular pencil tool, and you can click and drag, you know, the shape that you like. I can change the point size of the shape. There's a smooth tool that you can choose, and again, I can kind of try to work with it a little bit. If I've gotten a little bit out of control, I can try to smooth that a little bit, and you just kind of redraw around where that's at. And I can also manipulate these points. So the little direct selection tool, and then I can continue to go back to my little smooth tool. And I'm really not very good with the little Bezier thing there, but people that are pretty good with that create some really amazing shapes. I'm not very good at it. I need a lot more practice. And you can add place pen, so the pen tool, I don't know if you see that, it looks like an old ink pen. So if you're unhappy with how many anchor points you have to manipulate, I can add anchor points. So if I think I need one right there, I can go there and I can click it. But then for me to manipulate that, it can't be that solid color. Well, is it going to let me? Maybe now. It has to be the see-through color. Remember to manipulate with that direct selection tool. Okay. And there's an erase too. So I'll go back to my little hover cam here. I think you've done a lot of the fill and stroke changes already. You're familiar with the color palette, adding colors, adding a tint or a gradient. We just did that. Selecting colors, a box with no stroke, a box with, and there's different alignments too, if it makes a difference. So if I go here, there's stroke, where's the little alignment? Oh, those are fun too. Now I'm not on this particular. It's aligned to center, aligned to outside, and I'm not sure why I'm, oh, click on the stroke itself. Oh, stroke, there we go. Okay, so things have moved around just a little tiny bit. There's all sorts of things you can do with a stroke, and maybe if I clicked on something that you can see and go to my stroke. So I can have like a little cap on it if I want to, and end cap. I can align, so if I have the star here, and the default, you can kind of see where the default's at. The blue line itself looks like it's in the middle of the black thick stroke. So the default is aligned to center, but it can make a difference in the size of an element if you align it to the center, align it inside, or align it outside. And let's see, if I click one square here and go to my stroke, there's also a gap. If I go to dashed, and then my gap color can be a color. This is pretty fun too. And I can even do the tint. Oh, I'm frozen. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Uh-oh. I'm frozen. Oh, no. So work with the gap. That's pretty fun. And you can, there's starts and stops, the scale, but you can change your, the gap color. You do have to click dashed. It's way down at the bottom, I think, to get the gap. Let me see if I can do, I can't do anything. Wow, I can't even Control-Alt-Delete. Oh dear. What did I do?